So, welcome, Graydon. It's so nice to have you back to see Nathan and Daniel again, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Principal Mary Kay, and thank you, St. Anthony Daniel. How are you guys doing today? Yeah? Are you happy to be out of classes? Yeah. That's always a good thing. I hope this is a good story. I think it is a good story. For those of you that have heard it before, I think you enjoyed it. For those of you that haven't heard it, I'm excited because this is the first time that you're hearing the mountain story of East Africa, Tanzania. This story has been told thousands of times. I've personally told it hundreds of times, but every time I tell it is a very special time. And so I'm excited that I get to share this story of Africa with you today. How many of you guys have been to Africa? Wow. Okay, so maybe 10 of you. How many of you want to go to Africa? Every single person except for a few, eh? Some of you just love Canada, because Canada is a good country too. But Africa is a beautiful country. Africa is a very exciting country. How many of you have seen The Lion King? Yeah? Okay, you've all seen The Lion King. So you've seen some of the animals that they have in The Lion King. The lions called Simba. They have the warthog, Pumbaa. They have the elephant, the Tembos, the giraffes. Well, when I went to Africa as a missionary. I was there to tell people about Jesus. I was working at a university in Tanzania, right below Kenya, a university called the University of Dar es Salaam. It means Haven of Peace. So it was the University of the Haven of Peace. And I was working there with students from countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, Sudan, Uganda, Congo. All the countries sent their students to this university. And after the students graduated from this university, they would go back and become presidents, vice presidents, people in government, very important people. And so I wanted to work with them as students at this university, sharing Jesus with them, so when they became a president or when they became a vice president of an African country, then they would know Jesus in their heart, and they would be able to make good decisions because of it. But this story I'm telling you today has nothing to do with my work at the university. It has everything to do with the safari and with animals. Because when I went to Tanzania, I just thought that I'd get off the plane and all the animals, they'd be there to greet me, right? Like I would just get off the plane. Like the Lion King, when they're presenting Simba, you have all the giraffes, all the elephants, all the birds flying all over. Rafiki puts out Simba, and they all start singing the Lion King song, right? So I figured, I don't want to burst your bubble, because all of you guys want to go to Africa except a few. But I'm telling you, when you get off the plane, you're not going to see all these animals. They're not going to be waiting there and singing there for you. It just doesn't happen. So I got off the plane, and none of the animals were singing for me. This is crazy. So I thought, I love animals. I mean, I personally went to university, and I took zoology, which of course, the first part of it is zoo. And what are in zoos? Animals. I was learning about animals, and so I wanted to go to Africa, and I wanted to see these wild animals. But I had been working for 2 months in Tanzania, and I still hadn't seen a lion. I had not seen a lion. So I had to fix that. I had to remedy that. So I found a friend. His name was Joffrey. He was a Tanzanian. And he told me he came from the interior. His hometown was the interior of Tanzania, a place called Morogoro. And he said, listen, I know in Dar es Salaam there's no animals, but if you go back to my hometown in Morogoro, he said, there's animals all over. Sometimes elephants walk through my backyard. And I said, well, Joffrey, can I go to your hometown? Like, can I go to your backyard and see these elephants? And he said, of course, Hakuna Matata. That's no problem. So I said, okay, Joffrey, can we go this weekend? And he said, well, I really want to see my parents, so sure, we can go this weekend. So we decided, me and another missionary, his name was Byron. My name is Graydon, by the way. The two of us and Joffrey, we went to Morogoro to see the elephants and to see the lions of East Africa. So we started going on our way. We made it to Morogoro. We took what they call a safari. So you can pay somebody from Tanzania. They'll put you in a Jeep, and they'll take you all through the wild parts of Africa where nobody lives. except for the animals, the lions, the elephants, the giraffes. And so we signed on to take one of these safaris and to see all these animals. And I can tell you, during the safari, it was one of the neatest times of my whole life. Like, how many of you guys have seen lions in a zoo? Okay, so almost all of you have seen a lion in a zoo. That's something. But how many of you have you seen lions right in front of you, not in a cage, no fence between you and the lion? How many of you have seen lions that way? Okay, a couple of you, wow. Well, I could tell you, seeing lions out in the wild in Africa, it's wild, it's crazy. And so I saw the lions, I saw the zebras, I saw the giraffes. You see, the thing about Tanzania is the R's and the L's they're mixed up. So that's giraffes and zebras. And I saw the hippos, I saw all the wild animals of Africa, and it was amazing. God's creation, it is incredible. It is wonderfully and fearfully made. But here's the other problem, is you remember that I'm a missionary, right? And so a missionary, we get to do a great job. We have the greatest job in the world. But we don't get the most money. Some other jobs get more money. And so missionaries, we have a small bank account, and so I could only afford to pay for a half-day safari. And so my safari, it finished at lunchtime, and this is when the story is about to start, being lost in the African jungle. My safari, it finished at lunchtime, and so me and my friend Byron, Joffrey decided to go and see his parents. It was just me and Byron. And I said, Byron, what are we going to do with the rest of our day? We're young, we're in Africa, and we're invincible. Nobody can touch us. We're invincible. And we're not going to waste this just, eating rice and talking with the locals. We have to do something serious. Would you agree with me that we had to do something serious? Yeah. We have to do something serious. So, we saw this mountain in the distance. Now, we didn't know how far away it was, but something inside of us pushed us forward. We just kind of wondered what was at the top of this mountain. And it was kind of calling to us. It's like, Graydon, Byron, come to the top of me. Know me better. And so when a mountain talks to you, like you have to go and you have to respond. Like you don't want to be rude if a mountain talks to you. So this mountain was calling to us, and we had to get to the top of this mountain. And so we decided we were going to go to the top of this mountain. Now, we didn't know how far away it was, but we figured we could get to the top of the mountain, and we'd be back before supper, right? But what we did, just to make my mom happy, because you know how moms are, all of you, you know how your moms are. They always are worrying about you. So just to make sure that my mom was happy, I talked to some of the locals before. So I went up to one of the locals, and I said, hello, good sir. I said, you've probably climbed the mountain before. And he just looked at me. I said, okay, well, I'll continue this conversation. I said, do you think I could get up to the top of the mountain and back down before supper? What do you think you said?
Yes.
Yes? No, he said yes. He said yes. He knows what he said because he's the one who said it. He said yes. So then I went to another local, and I said, hello there, miss. Do you think I could get to the top of the mountain in maybe 3 hours and, back down in a couple hours? Would that be possible?
Yes.
Yes, they said yes. So then I asked another person, could I get to the base of the mountain in an hour? And they said, Hakuna Matata. Say Hakuna Matata. Hakuna Matata, Omninoma. No worries, man. That's what they said to me. They said it's okay. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about people in Tanzania, is they're some of the most beautiful people in the world. I wish I could go back. But they're also very agreeable. Do you guys know what that means?
Yes.
I think you're a very smart school, so I think you know what that means. They're very agreeable. So I could have said anything. I could have said, do you think I could get up that mountain and back in 30 minutes? No. Yeah. 5 minutes? Yeah. 2 seconds? Yeah. 2 years? Hakuna Matata, man. So this is the problem, is I didn't really have very good information. And this is what I say. So me and my friend Byron, we started walking towards the top of this mountain. And it says, armed with a sense of adventure, that didn't match our knowledge of the African landscape, because we really didn't know anything, we pressed on. So we started going to the top of the mountain. Now, we were walking, and at first it was very nice. We were just kind of walking through flat land. We could still see the mountain, and we were walking through villages. Now, I think some of these villages had never seen a white missionary before. And the reason I think that is because a couple of the little kids, when they saw the two white guys, me and my friend, walking down the path, they ran from us. They were terrified of us. They thought there were two ghosts because we were very white. We didn't have good tans. So we were lit up by the sun, and they thought there were two ghosts coming towards them. So they ran away from the ghosts. And even, you think that's crazy, even the donkeys. Like, the donkeys would be walking along the path, we'd be walking, and they'd make a big U around us. And I thought, oh, maybe they do that with everyone. But then I saw a couple Tanzanians walk, and the donkeys just walked right beside them. So apparently it was us. They were scared of us. So we made it to one of the villages, and then a chief, the strongest, the bravest man of the village, he's the chief. So the chief came up to us to greet us, and we said, hello, sir. We are trying to make it to the top of the mountain. He said, okay. And we said, what is the name of this mountain? And he said, the name of this mountain is Mount MARIDA. Mount MARIDA, because they roll their R's. Mount MARIDA. Mount MARIDA. Exactly. So he said the mount was Mount MARIDA, and as he was saying that, a couple kids were hiding behind his legs, just kind of peeking out, looking at the two ghosts that were trying to climb this mountain. So anyway, probably we started our journey maybe at 12 o'clock, and I think we entered the jungle. We entered the jungle at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, we wouldn't see another person for the next 3 days. So we entered the jungle at 3 o'clock, left all civilization behind, no more villages, and we got into the jungle. And we were moving at a good pace, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Do any of you know, especially those of you that have been to Africa, maybe Tanzania, what time the sun goes down in Tanzania? What time do you think? Here, I'll ask my man over here.
5.
You think it goes down at 5? Okay. It does not go down at 5, but that's a good guess. Let me ask somebody else. What time do you think it goes down?
7.
What did you say?
7 o'clock.
You said 7 o'clock? Yes? Yes. How did you know? Have you been to Tanzania before? Really? Really?
I've been to South Africa.
You've been to South Africa. I knew there was something about you. Yes. How did you know? The sun goes down in Tanzania at 7 o'clock sharp. And it's so sharp, it is the sharpest ever. It's as if God takes the sun and he whips it out of the sky and it disappears. Like, it doesn't even go down slowly. It just drops. It's like it was standing on something and somebody knocks the thing out and it just drops. So all of a sudden, it's light and then it's dark. And so we were wandering through the jungle in the pitch darkness. Now, why do you think this was a problem? I will tell you why it's a problem, because apparently all of you know. I'll tell you why it's a problem. It's a problem because all of the animals that we had seen in the safari earlier in the morning, they made their home in this jungle. This is where they lived. Now, impala, gazelle, wildebeest, we're not too worried about that. But what we are worried about is the lions and the cheetahs. Yes, and the snakes, the mambas and the cobras. And the thing about that is that these animals, they hunt when it gets dark. For those of you that know a lot about animals, you know that lions, they can see well in the darkness. And that's when they start hunting. And us people, we can't see as well. So we were two white guys, completely blind, couldn't see anything, wandering around in the jungle with the lions just waking up and deciding that they were hungry. But you know what? We were not afraid. And you know why we weren't afraid?
Why?
I'll tell you, because this thing right here. Do you see this right here? What do you think this is?
A beard.
Yeah, that's a beard. Listen, let me tell you something. You can take this to the bank. Anybody who has a beard is never afraid. Okay, so those of you that have fathers that have beards, they're never afraid. So I'm never afraid because I have a beard. So maybe all of you, someday you will know, and you'll never be afraid because one day you'll all have beards, right? All right. Let me read something for you. Let me read something for you from the Bible. This comes from Psalm 91. For those of you that have Bibles, open your Bible tonight, turn to the book of Psalms, it's in the Old Testament, and read chapter 91. Let me read this for you. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely God will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly animals. He will cover you. God will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the animals that stalk you in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but will not come near you, because you will only observe it with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. So let me tell you, we were wandering in the darkness, two guys that couldn't see very well with animals stalking us. And then all of a sudden, we saw a light. We saw a light in the distance. And we hadn't seen people for 4 hours. We hadn't even seen a village. So we ran towards the light, and we started yelling, Hodi, Hodi, no Messiah dia, Hodi, Hodi. Is anybody there? Please help us, please help us. Nobody answered. So we got closer and closer to that light. And that light, it turned out to be a campfire. In the middle of the African jungle, there was a campfire sitting, waiting for us. And it wasn't just a campfire, there was also a shelter made of acacia branches and palm leaves, sitting there waiting for us. But nobody was there, and nobody returned to the shelter all night. So what we did is we made our home there, we made the fire bigger, and we were completely safe from all the animals because they're afraid of fire. Now, I don't know, if you think about that, how you explain where that fire came from. Personally, I think God put it there because He takes care of us. And sometimes people say, well, hey, there's the two of you right there. If you could see us in the back, I'm the guy with the thing on my head, and there's my friend Byron. He's sticking his arm up. And people say, wait a minute, there was only two of you. How did you get the picture? Well, you can set cameras on automatic timers. So we just set our camera, it took the picture. That answers your question later on. So we took that picture. We were so thankful to God. We went to sleep, and then we woke up in the morning. And what do you think we did in the morning? Oh, we just turned around, right? Because God was so good to us, He prepared this fire for us. So then we turned around, and we went back, and that's the end of the story, right? No, it's not the end of the story. We decided we've come this far, and we're closer to the mountain, because when we woke up, we were right at the base of the mountain. So we decided, let's keep going to the top of the mountain, because it did talk to us after all. So we start going, and I could tell you this was the craziest climb of my life. Like, how many of you guys like to go on hikes? You guys are hiking kind of people? Yeah, well, I like to go on hikes too, and I've gone on hikes all through Canada. But this was the craziest hike of my life. I was sometimes on my hands and knees, going through thorns, going over bushes. Here's the thing about Tanzania, is everything bites you in Tanzania. Like, of course, the lions bite you, the cheetahs bite you, the snakes bite you, but the vegetables bite you as well. So, yeah, every single one of the plants in Africa, they have thorns, and they bite you. You go past them, and they scratch you. Everything in Africa bites you. So I was going through, and I was getting cut up all over, and we also didn't have much water. This was the height of the African dry season. There's only 2 seasons in Africa. We have 4 seasons, right? We have winter, spring, summer, and fall. They only have 2 seasons. They have a dry season, and they have a wet season. In the wet season, there's plenty of water. But in the dry season, there's no water. And so we had very little water, and it was so hot. Like, I've even seen people in Tanzania who are used to this weather during the dry season all hide behind a little tree. Like 10 of them will be hiding behind a little tree just so they can get in the shade. If it's too hot for people in Tanzania, imagine how hot it is for 2, what they call us as Mzungus, 2 white people. It was very hot for us. And so we were going. We made it to the edge of the mountain, probably around 11 o'clock. We had been hiking for 4 more hours without any water. And the very final thing to get to the top of the mountain, it was a cliff. It was a straight up vertical cliff, a rock face. But we decided, should we turn back? I mean, we've come this far, right? If we've come this far, we're going to go to the top of the mountain. And so it was a straight up vertical cliff. And so we start climbing up this vertical cliff. And I'm sticking my hands in the holes, and Byron is below me, and we're scaling the side of this cliff without any ropes or without any gear. And then all of a sudden, I stick my hand in a crevice, and a little head pops out. And it's right beside my finger. And it's like, tss, tss, tss. So I wasn't moving, and it wasn't moving. And I was trying to stay perfectly still, even though there was sweat running down my face and into my eyes. And I was just, oh, please, God, please, don't let this thing bite me. And it was looking down at me, and it was thinking, who's this crazy white person who stuck his hand in my home? I have never seen this before in my life. This is very interesting. So it's looking down at me, and I'm looking up at it, and it's looking down at me, and I'm looking up at it. And then all of a sudden, it runs away. It scampers away. It was a lizard. I thought it was a snake. Yeah, you all thought it was a snake. Yes, that's what I did. But it was actually a lizard. But at the time, I thought it was a snake. So I got up to the top of the mountain, and I was the first one to get to the top. And there was just one tree, just one little tree at the top of the mountain. So I decided that I was going to climb this tree so that I could see, where we'd come from and maybe see a way to go back home. So I climbed this tree to the very top, and I looked out in this direction where I thought we'd come from. But do you know what I saw? No, all I saw was jungle, as far as my eyes could see. And we had even gone over little mountains and gone down little valleys all the way to this big mountain. But even those looked flat because we were so high. All I could see, as far as the eye could see, was jungle canopy. So I looked out this way, and all I could see was jungle canopy. And I looked out this way, all I could see was jungle, and my friend Byron laying there passed out. That's what I saw. Jungle, my friend passed out. That's all I saw. Now I figured if I got to the top of the mountain that I'd probably see the village, the village that I'd seen the mountain from. Why couldn't I see the village from the top of the mountain? I thought I'd probably at least be able to see a way out, but I couldn't see anything. And I really didn't even know where we'd come from because we didn't follow a path. So I was getting a little bit afraid that I didn't know the way back home. And then I turned over and I saw my friend Byron passed out because he had no water and he was sick. And at this point, I realized that we could probably die. We could die on the top of this mountain. We were at least a day's hike in. We had no more water. We hadn't found any water. My friend was passed out, and I didn't even know the way back home. This is a very scary thing. And I couldn't just pull out my cell phone and, oh, someone please send an ambulance, somebody please send a helicopter, because that's not how it works. There's no cell phone coverage in the middle of the African jungle, so I was lost. The only person who could possibly hear me out there was God. When your cell phone doesn't work, who else can hear you but God? So that's the moment when I prayed. So I just got down on my knees and I said, Lord God, we have made a huge mistake in coming to the top of this mountain. And I know that we can die up here. But I'm just asking you that maybe if you save us and you rescue us from the top of this mountain, that we promise we'll always tell this story. If you rescue us, we'll tell this story every time people ask us to tell this story. And we won't be the heroes of this story. We'll make sure that you're the hero. Because right now, if it was just up to us, we would die. So that was our prayer. So we finished praying that prayer, and then we decided the next thing we have to do is find water. Now my friend Byron, he went to school for ecology. So he kind of knows the lay of the land. He knows where to find water. Basically, with his 4 years of university, all he knew was that water is in the lowest place. So I guess his 4 years served him well. So we start going towards the lowest place. This was the way home, but instead of going this way, we take a left. And we start going to what looks like really low land. We're running off the side of the mountain, and the jungle is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, to the point where I can't even see Byron in front of me. I can only hear his footsteps. And so I keep calling out to him, Byron, are you still there? Yeah, I'm still there. Byron, are you still there? Yeah, I'm still there, Graydon. Byron, are you still there? Byron, Are you still there? Byron! Byron! Ah! Let me tell you something. It's bad to be two people lost in the African jungle, but it is even worse to be one person alone lost in the African jungle. That's even worse. So I'm calling out, Byron, where are you? Byron, where are you? Byron, please don't leave me. I need you, man. I need you. And then all of a sudden, I heard a still, faint little voice that was calling out, yeah! Woohoo! Yeah! Ah! So I'm following this because this is not the normal sound that you hear in the African jungle. So I'm running towards this and I see it's my friend, it's Byron. But he fell down a hole. And I said, Byron, what are you doing down a hole, man? Like, this is no time to play around. We're lost in an African jungle here. Like, get up out of that hole. What are you doing in that hole? And he said, Graydon, I fell down this hole. Like, I just tripped and fell down this hole. And I said, well, get out. But he said, there's water down here. Are you crazy? So I ran down. I was there quick as he said it. I ran down to the bottom of the hole. And there, it was water. So I got down on my hands and knees, and I started digging. And everywhere I dug, it filled up with water. It was a big, huge hole of water. And so we had these empty canisters that we had brought with us, 2 empty bottles that you could see through. And so we took the empty bottles out of our backpack, and we filled it up with this water. And then we stuck it up to heaven, like up in the sky, just to thank God for it. But we couldn't even see our hands through the other side of the bottle because it was so muddy, right? But anyway, who cares? So we took our shirts off so that we could put them over the opening of the bottle, and we drank through our shirts just so it would filter out like the big stuff, like the mud and the bugs and whatever else. And we started drinking. And let me tell you, this is the sweetest water that I've ever drank in my life. It was the best. Like, some of you guys, you're bottled water people. Like, some of you say, oh, I like Dasani, or I like, what's the other company? Natural, whatever you said. I like Nestle water. Well, let me tell you something. This was the greatest water I've ever had in my life. I would go back to Tanzania, I would bottle it, and I would make a fortune. This is the greatest water I've ever drank in my life. We drank this whole bottle down. We thank God that none of those little micro nasty evils that were living in the water made us sick. We thank God for that. And we left. We filled our bottles up and we kept going. So we were going towards what we thought was somewhere that we would be safe. We saw this dark mountain in the distance, right? And we figured if we could make it to the edge of this dark mountain, that would be where we would see a village. That would be where we would be saved. So we got to the edge. Let me show you this little part here.
That's you.
That's me. It says, with a prayer, we were off. Our first task was to scale down the side of this cliff. So we were standing at the edge of a cliff, and we had to scale down it to get to this dark mountain in the distance. It was more a question of catching the next tree as we slid and crashed our way down through the brush. It was tough work. Our hands, arms, ankles were getting cut up badly due to all the dry grass and thorny bushes we had to rip through. But we were focused on the mission, full of adrenaline, and very aware of the consequences of failure. So we flew down the side of this mountain, and then we went up a little mountain, down a valley, up a mountain, down a valley, and we saw this dark mountain in the distance. And we figured if we could make it to this dark mountain, then we'd be saved. This was probably sometime in the early afternoon, so we had about 5 hours left of sunlight. And we were making good time. We were going down valleys and up mountains probably every half hour. So we kept up this pace, we'd make it to the dark mountain in time. But then all of a sudden, my friend Byron, he starts complaining of cramps. He says, hey, my leg's hurting, but don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Let's keep going. So he has leg cramps. I think, okay, fine. But then my friend Byron, he starts slowing down. Like he has to take breaks. And this is really hurting us because I don't know that we're going to have a fire this night, and I don't want to be eaten by a lion, right? So we slow down. Then one time I remember, I was walking down the path just thinking he was with me, and I turn around, and my friend Byron, he's gone. He's not even with me. So I trace my steps back, and I find my friend, and he's just laying on the ground. He's passed out. laying in full view of the sun. And so I shake him, I wake him up. This is my friend Byron right here. So I wake him up, and I say, Byron, wake up, man. And he says, no, Mom, no, just let me sleep a little bit longer. And I said, Byron, I'm not your mom, man. Like, we're lost in the African jungle, and we got to get out because we got no water, and the lions are tracking us. So he gets up, but he doesn't know where he is. The problem is remember when he was sick on the top of the mountain? Well, the water that we found, it helped him out for a little while. It made him feel good. But then we ran out of water again because we had been hiking for maybe 3 hours going up and down these valleys. And that water, it kept him from getting sick. But he was already sick. So once we ran out of water again, he got really sick. And this time, he got sicker than the time before. He was so sick. I actually wrote something down about it. It says, his eyes, my friend Byron, his eyes were sunk in the back of his head. His lips were badly chapped and missing most of their color, which proved true for the rest of his wrinkled face. We were beat up, cut up, and burnt, but he was much worse. That was him. There's a close-up picture. You can't tell how much he was suffering, but he was so sick. He was so sick. And so we were having to take breaks. So I'd wake him up, and I'd point out a tree, and I'd say, can we at least make it to this tree? So we'd go about 10 feet, he'd pass out, I'd roll him under the shade of the tree, and this was our progress. So I thought, God, there's no way we're going to make it to this dark mountain in time if my friend is so sick. So I ran down to the bottom of a valley, and I said, I know you've already provided water once, but we need water again. We need it a second time. So I ran down to the bottom of this valley, just trusting that God would provide water for us again. And my friend Byron, he found me about 15, 20 minutes later, and I was just sitting on a rock, and there was no water down there, and I was yelling. So I started yelling at Byron. I said, Byron, there's no water down here. You're not going to make it to this dark mountain. Like, why would God take us all the way to Africa just to kill us? Like, I know we've made our mistakes, but there's no way we're going to get out. It's so stupid. And then Byron, he looked at me. So you're going to be me, and I'm going to be Byron. I'm not going to be you. You're going to be me. I'm going to be Byron. So Byron looks at me, and he says, don't worry, Graydon. We're going to be okay. God's going to save us. And I said, Byron, if you're going to say that, at least look at me. And he said, I thought I was looking at you. That's what you say. He said, I thought I was looking at you. The thing is my friend Byron, he was so sick and he was so out of his mind that he couldn't even see anymore. He couldn't even see what he was looking at. He thought he was looking at me. So I'm like, great. My friend has no water, and he can't even see anymore. And then I was about to yell again, and then all of a sudden this fly, there's this little African fly, and it's like, I'm watching, and boop, right in my eye. So there's a fly in my eye. So I'm trying to rub this fly out of my eye, and I'm trying to get it out, but it actually didn't come out. I'm rubbing, and it didn't come out. So then I couldn't even see out of this eye because there's a fly in my eye that wouldn't come out. So I couldn't see out of this eye. My friend Byron, he couldn't see out of either of his eyes. So the two of us, between two of us, we only had one eyeball that worked. So now we had no water. There were lions stalking us. We didn't think we were going to make it to the dark mountain in time. And we had one eyeball between the two of us wandering through this jungle. This is the time where God had to take over, because before we had a little bit of strength left. Even though we prayed to God and said, please save us, we were still trusting in our own strength. But at this point, we were very pathetic, and God had to take over. Somehow, by God's grace, we made it to the dark mountain. We made it to the edge of the dark mountain. Even though we had one eye, we made it to the edge of the dark mountain. And I left Byron, and I looked out on the other side to see if I could see a village, because I thought this was a high mountain, and I was just sure that God would provide. So I got to the edge of the dark mountain, and I looked out, and I saw jungle, jungle, jungle. And then all of a sudden, I saw a village. It was very far away, and it was only about this big. It was a very small village, maybe for ants, or maybe I was just very high up. But I looked out, and I saw this little village way out there. And so I ran back to Byron, and I said, Byron, we're going to be okay. God's protected us. God saved us. There's a village way out there. And he said, okay, that's great, Graydon. But he said, I can't even stand. Like, I can't even stand to get down the side of this dark hill, this dark mountain that we're on. How am I going to make it to this village that you see? And I said, I don't know. So he crawled, my friend Byron, he crawled to the edge of the dark hill. And I was looking out, trying to figure out how I was going to get my friend down the side of this hill. This was even longer than the side of the mountain that we were on earlier. It was a very long drop. It was very rocky, super rocky. And I was like, am I going to carry my friend? But then all of a sudden, something happened that I don't think you're ever going to hear again. This is very wild. I looked to my side, and a piece of tumbleweed rolled past me. But it was actually my friend. You see what he did? Because he couldn't stand, he took his hands and he covered his ears and his face because he liked his face. And then he rolled up like this in the fetal position, and he just started rolling down the hill. So my friend Byron, he was rolling down the hill at crazy speeds, flying down this hill, and he was smashing rocks, like falling 6 feet at a time sometimes into piles of rocks. He didn't even know where he was. He just looked around, dust himself off. He was so crazy, it didn't even matter. He just rolled back up in the fetal position and kept rolling. And I was running step for step, trying to keep up with him. But I was tripping and falling and smashing my face into rocks. And we were going down, and I think we rolled and ran for 30 minutes straight. This is crazy because forget about the rocks, forget about breaking bones. This is where snakes live. Snakes live on these, they live on these rocks. They warm themselves up at this time of day. Now, most people in Tanzania, when they're walking in the jungle, they take a look at every step to make sure that they're not stepping on snakes that will bite them. I don't think we were very careful because we were rolling down the side of this mountain. I mean, if any snakes wanted to bite us, they would. But check out the way that Psalm 91 finishes. It's almost as if God knew that we'd be in that situation and wrote it 2,000 years earlier, just for us. If you make the Most High God your dwelling, even the Lord who is my refuge, then no harm will befall you, no disaster will come near your tent, for he, God, will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands. You will not strike your foot against a stone. Remember all the rocks I told you about? You will trample upon the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent because he loves me. That's important. Because he loves me, says God, I will rescue him. I'll protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, which we did. We said, God, save us, and I will answer him. I'll be with him in trouble. I'll deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. So we got down to the bottom of this dark hill after 30 minutes of rolling. And the trees, they were much higher than they had been when we were at the top. And the sun was starting to go down, and it was very dark again. And I was afraid. I was very afraid. But I didn't want to tell Byron because he was feeling very sick and afraid. And so we made our way through this jungle. I basically was on my hands and knees, just crawling through the jungle, and he was following me on his hands and knees, cutting through this jungle. And we probably did this for about an hour. I was trying to remember the location that I'd seen the village, and we just shot in that location. And we crawled for about an hour. And then all of a sudden, I fell out as I was crawling. I crawled onto what felt like cultivated land. It didn't feel like the jungle. It felt like somebody had kind of cleared it. It wasn't very big, but I couldn't even stand anymore. And my friend Byron, he didn't even know where he was. So we just decided that we would lay on our backs and we would look up at the stars, and we hoped that God would take care of us without a fire tonight. And I could tell you, we were laying on our backs, we were listening to all the sounds of the jungle. I don't know if you've ever spent a night in a jungle, but you hear all the animals. You know, you hear the sounds of the monkeys, you hear the sounds of the birds, and things that might be bigger that you don't know about. So we heard the whole orchestra of the jungle around us, and then eventually, we fell asleep, and it was completely quiet. It was completely quiet in the jungle. We fell asleep. We woke up in the morning, and Byron, he's the first one that wakes up, and he shakes me, and he says, Graydon, I think we slept in a farmer's field last night, and I see a path. It doesn't look like people have used this path for a long time, but it looks like a path. And I said, okay, well, we'll follow it. I mean, what else are we going to do? So we followed this path, and we must have followed it on the third day for a couple hours. And then we turned a corner, and we saw that. You can just make it out there. You see the little houses and the palm that's on the top of those houses? Well, that's what we saw. I turned the corner, and I saw a village. And this is one of the sweetest things that my eyes have ever seen. Now, I'm not an emotional person. Like, for us guys in the room, guys don't cry, right? Well, I don't cry. Guys with beards don't cry. We don't cry. But when I looked at that village, I was so excited at what I saw and so emotional that I almost started crying. But I actually didn't have any water in me, so it was just the thought of a tear. I wanted to cry, but it's just all the little thoughts of tears coming out of me. Poof, poof. Those are my tears, right? They're thoughts of tears because I have no water. So we ran out to the village and we said, "No Masaidia, hodi, hodi, no Masaidia, Magi, Magi, Magi. Please help us, please come out, help us, save us. Water, water, water." And the villagers, they came running out to us and they yelled, "Simba, Simba, Simba, Simba," which means lion. So we turned around us thinking that we've made it this far and now they're right behind us and they're going to kill us? What? But no, there were no lions behind us. The thing is we were so cut up. We were so cut up from going through the jungle that our arms and our legs were all bloody. We're super bloody. And so they thought we had been attacked by lions. They thought there were more in our party, and we were the only two that made it out, and the rest were eaten by lions. So they took us into the village right away. And the ladies of the village, they gave us porridge, they gave us bananas, they gave us water. I remember the biggest tragedy is these ladies in the village, they took my hands, which were all bloody, and they started washing this water over my hands to clean off the blood. And I was watching this water hit the ground, thinking, I am so thirsty. Like, I haven't seen this water for a full day. Like, I wanted to get down after they cleaned my hands and, lick up the puddle. That's how thirsty I was. I was like, don't worry about my hands. My hands will clean themselves. Put this water in my mouth. But anyway, the village, it was so good to us. It took care of us, and it brought us up to strength. And when we were strong enough, the chief of the village, he took us, and he led us the rest of the way to a road. And he said, you can hitchhike, actually in Tanzania, you hitchhike like this. So not like this, like we do in Canada. You take your whole arm, and you put it out like an elephant's trunk. And that's how you hitchhike in Tanzania. So he said, just do this, and a car will stop for you, and they'll take you back in the city. So I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out all these crumpled Tanzanian bills. I pulled out all the Tanzanian money that I had, and I gave it to the chief. And I said, take this, bring it back to your village. I hope it blesses you, because you've blessed us so much. You've saved our lives. So I gave the money to the chief. We found a car. We hitchhiked back in the city, and we were saved. God took care of us, right? So that's the end of my story. But I want to say one thing. And if you don't catch anything else, catch this part of the story. Here's the thing about this mountain, guys, is God whispered this mountain into existence. He just whispered, and this mountain was. We thought, remember at the start of the story I told you guys that we thought we were two invincible guys? Well, we weren't invincible. We were very, very fragile. And we almost died in that jungle on that mountain. God whispered that mountain into existence, and it almost killed us. But here's the thing about God, is when you walk with God, remember what that psalm said? When you acknowledge His name, when you follow Jesus, then He never leaves you. We were completely alone in that African jungle. Our parents couldn't help us. Nobody in the world even knew where we were. But God knew where we were. God had never left us. When we called out to Him, He heard us and He rescued us. So I want to encourage you guys today that you're in elementary school, but soon for some of you are going to go to high school really soon. And I could tell you that sometimes in high school, it's very scary. And sometimes, you feel, even though you're surrounded by a bunch of people, you feel all alone. Just remember this talk when that happens. And when you feel all alone, call out to God, because He's the one who's never left you. He's the one who's right beside you. And if you call out to Him, He'll take care of you. He'll be your best friend. So I want to encourage you with that. God is my best friend, and He saved me on that mountain. Thanks a lot, guys.